I think our first guest doesn't need an introduction, but if needed, okay. Vitalik Buterin, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Do you have some opening thoughts you'd like to share before we get into specific questions from the audience?
That is a vague question. How about you ask the question and I'll share my opening thoughts about it in response.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, I have one I had my own mind on. I watched your talk in Berlin at the Web3Privacy Hackathon. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things mentioned there was the current divide between focus on privacy from business perspective and privacy for civilians.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that and the efforts being taken for that in the Ethereum ecosystem?
Yeah, and so I think privacy is an interesting space because it combines a lot of people who care about privacy from a lot of different angles and often have a lot of different things in mind in terms of like what specific properties they want, like what kind of data they're protecting, who they're okay with seeing that data, what kind of level of guarantees that they want. And like you have individuals that are motivated by like various different considerations, sometimes ideological, sometimes practical. You have institutions motivated sometimes by their own interests, sometimes to satisfy some kind of liability or compliance related requirements. Then you have governments that sometimes also care about keeping their data private from each other, right? And like these are all very different types of users, right? And what we've seen in the privacy spaces so far, right, is like there are a lot of people in the enterprise world who care about some kind of privacy, right? And like the like Nightfall and all of the efforts from EY have been, I think, excellent projects, and like they are just one example to show how much interest there is. And even if we go beyond crypto, there's a huge amount of interest in all kinds of privacy protection. But then at the same time, like I guess the two sort of concern you can call it concerning factors. I'm not exactly sure what the right word is. That one of them is that like there's this disjointness between the two ecosystems, and then the other one is that like the thing that they want, and I think the thing that a lot of people here want is like not exactly the same, right? Like like the kind of privacy that's an enterprise gets and that it gives to its own users is different from the kind of privacy that, like, for example, like a VPN is trying to provide, right? And it's and then there, like, one aspect of it is like what level of privacy, right? So a lot of the time when you talk to enterprise-based projects, like they're explicitly okay with certain kinds of backdoors because the thing that they want is like only we can see our customers' data, or like, oh well, we know we have to give data to the government for some compliance reason, but we want to keep data private from everyone else. But for a consumer privacy use case, like a lot of the time, not having backdoors is the whole point. And I would even say that for the first category of use case, like a lot of the time, the underlying problems can be solved without backdoors and can be solved with like more clever things. I mean, either privacy pools type ideas or like ways of zero knowledge proving specific claims about yourself without revealing everything. And so like there is that that reason for the separation between those two spaces. I mean, I think, like, to me, the worst case outcome for me, right, is where you both have two different privacy spaces, and at the same time the enterprise space kind of alone drives the agenda in terms of like what privacy actually means and what it is. And because I like ultimately privacy is a thing that has a lot of different constituencies, and I think there's like all kinds of different different people's needs needs to be respected and catered to, and catered to in a way that doesn't like enshrine institutional actors in situations where that's not necessary. And then the best case outcome, I think, is where the a kind of direction of influence goes the other way, right? And all kinds of privacy technologies that we develop here actually start making their way up, and even influencing how institutions operate. And then at the same time, while that whole process is happening, there's cooperation on technology going on, and so it's like there's a lot of effort from both sides coming toward improving the things that everyone does agree on, which is the core building blocks, right? And there's a lot of effort that needs to go into like making zero knowledge proofs better, making fully homomorphic encryption or obfuscation better, even. And I think more divergence on some of the consumer level problems, but also still quite a bit of overlap there, right? I think even on the security side, like what we've seen with like more and more secure elements and different kinds of phones, like that wasn't really done with crypto people in mind, but it's definitely been helpful to crypto users, right? And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for things like that to happen on the privacy side. Yeah, so I see them as I see these as ecosystems that can and should be cooperating a lot, but also we should keep in mind that it's not the same ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I have a list of prepared questions, but we're also here to Q&A, so I'm assuming you have some burning questions somewhere in mind you'd like to ask now that you have the chance. Yeah, we got one. There you go.
Hi, Vitalik and Frigga from the W3Privacy Foundation. So you've worked on economic incentives for about 10 years now, and very successfully. How do we economically incentivize people's participation in privacy? It's a very broad question, but I'm sure you have some thoughts.
I mean, liquidity rewards. No, just kidding. No, I think it's. I think that things like that could be useful as a short-term thing, but obviously, like on net, rewards and fees have to sum to zero, so you can't be rewarding everyone. I mean, to me, the more important, like the most important variable is reducing the cost, right? Because if the cost is reduced, then if the cost is reduced to the point where it's negligible, then people will use the private thing. And HTTPS is a great example of that, right? And so when I look at I think the question of why isn't there more volume in privacy protocols, like the right question to ask is not why are people not putting more money into privacy protocols, it's why are you not putting more money into privacy protocols, right? And so like for me personally, for example, the biggest answer is kind of just like trust in technology, right? So and then there's two parts to this, right? One of them is that there's ZK snarks are they're definitely a less new thing than before, but a lot of skeletons in the closet, a lot of really complicated code, and I would not want to be in a position where if that complicated code breaks and then there's a soundness bug and all my money disappears, right? I'm okay with a small portion, but not all. And then the other one, and this one is I think actually solvable for you guys, is multisigs. I fundamentally do not believe that single key wallets should be supporting a safety dependency for the bulk of people's money. And right now in Railgun, there is one seed phrase and there's one computer that has the key. And so my view in the long term is actually that this is part of why I've been talking about the EVM moving to RISC-V, so we can get to the point where your public account and your private account are the same account, and then you just ZK prove EVM code that shows that you can control your public account. But while we're not there, just explicit native multisig support would actually improve things quite a bit for me, right? And then Yeah, so those are probably the two big reasons why. Like, if you had to ask me, like, why I don't have 10 times more money inside of a railgun pool right now, right? I mean, I'd be curious to answer for other people. Like, why don't you have 10 times more money in a railgun pool?
If I would have 10 times more, then maybe I would.
No, well, why don't you have 10 times more than you have already? Or if what you have already is 0, then you already have 10 times more than you have. But
Empty docs, scriptsy. There's a lot of cases where I could have had with it.
okay.
Actually, it's a good question to ask also to Yuda from Fracton Ventures later. Let's talk about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not the topic here.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Okay, who else wants to shout out a reason why don't you have 10 times more of your money in a railgun pool?
Opportunity cost.
Okay. What other things are you doing with your money?
Other investments.
Okay.
Real estate.
Okay. Oh, I see. So, like outside of crypto things. Okay. Who here has a reason why they don't have more of their crypto money in Railgun?
User experience. User experience.
User experience. Okay.
The lack of assets, like if you want to hold like staked ETH, it's difficult to do because the privacy set's going to be pretty.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
my like
Yeah.
rocket pulley. Well, it's not really privacy.
Yeah.
Lack of assets, you said, for the recording.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's a combination of all of these things, and I do think that like a large portion of them just like boil down to tech maturity, and tech maturity is something that like will continue improving over time.
So.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Who else? Otherwise, I'm just going to fire another one. Yeah. We have one in the middle. I'll repeat it for you.
So to what extent do you think that privacy on Ethereum will enable use cases that are typically relegated to more like darknet market, like that market does?
To what extent do you expect privacy features on Ethereum to eventually?
I mean, it's it's an interesting question, and it's hard to answer because, like, if you compare Zcash and Monero, for example, right, like, functionally speaking, Zcash is more private than Monero, but then, like, there's this social norm that Monero is where the druggies go. And, I mean, I think to some extent, like Zuko has never catered to druggies, and that has been, has somehow, like, led to Zcash not really been being a thing there. So I think like social factors matter quite as much as technology. But then I mean even social factors, like Ethereum is a diverse ecosystem, and there's L2s and so and all kinds of different chains connected to it. So it's yeah, like basically yeah. And so, like, when general purpose technology exists, people people can and will use it for general purposes, but the exact details of like what gets used for what to what extent, I think, depend on a lot of factors that go beyond like whether or not the technology exists, and like the whole Zcash and Monero thing is a really good example there.
Is your question answered?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I see a hand in the back. Yes, go ahead.
What are your thoughts on EIP 7503 and does the move to RISC-V and like trying to keep Ethereum lean make it less likely that that ever?
Okay.
Thoughts on EIP 705?
Yes. Okay. So EIP 7503 is the wormhole EIP, and what it is it's a proposed L1 protocol feature where if you can, there's a new transaction type where if you provide a snark that is a proof that shows that you had previously sent ETH to an address where that address is unspendable and it commits to a value, and you provide that you provided a nullifier for, then you can effectively, like from Ethereum's perspective, get that ether back out of thin air. And like that basically is Ethereum baking in like explicit L1 privacy, and it's an interesting idea. The reason why I'm against it short term is again basically tech readiness, right? Because if the wormhole gets APIs included like now, then if there is a soundness bug, then people will be able to print infinite money, and we will not even be able to tell when that's happening, right? And that's like a really scary thing for a blockchain protocol. And so I think to me, like the lower hanging fruit in expanding the privacy user set is like solving all of the UX layers other than like the whether it's like enshrined or a higher level feature, right? And so that's part of why the ETH has been getting more involved, active in wallets. It's also why we've been thinking about things like account abstraction and fossil, and like with in the context of privacy protocols, right? And like that's the more kind of like short-term stuff. And then like if we have an infinite level of trust in ZK technologies, then like in principle, I think wormholes are great, but like it is like the tech readiness thing is the issue right now.
So to add to that question, if you're making the L1 with privacy proof for that matter, how would that affect current L2s focusing on privacy to resolve that issue? As in projects like Aztec, like Coti,
right?
There's quite some.
Yeah, I mean, I think, realistically, okay, so I think privacy for payments is something that, I think will be commoditized and should be commoditized, right? And it's something that needs to become a default part of the Ethereum user experience that is just a natural part of people's workflow, and is like not it should not feel like an even partially separate ecosystem. I think the place that's valuable for privacy protocols to shine is basically everything beyond payments, right? And this is where like Railgun has been doing a good job in terms of all of their private DeFi features. I think Aztec has also been doing a good job there in terms of because their entire thing is a privacy-friendly smart contract programming language. I mean, Intmax is I think in like the value add there is actually well, in that case, it is payments focused, but it's privacy on top of the extreme scalability that's enabled by their version of like the hybrid plasma technology. So basically, to me, I think L2s should not be trying to just kind of like be branded shards of Ethereum L1, right? L2s should be trying to like bring interesting things on top, and I think a very similar thing is going to be true for private transactions as well.
While we're here, and you say, Noah?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we could. Wait, untie it. Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can reach it.
Okay. So since you mentioned L2s as, let's say, their own sort of things on top of L1 Ethereum, I'm wondering about the perverse incentives within the investments of the Ethereum Foundation into L2s that lead to difficulties with L1 Ethereum scaling, because L1 Ethereum is in a way then not allowed to compete with the L2s.
Has the Ethereum Foundation made investments into L2s?
Not necessarily Ethereum Foundation, but many people involved with Ethereum, many people involved with leadership, and many key decision makers in a way.
Right.
I would just like to open that topic.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I think it's it's definitely true. Kind of both, like within the it's the privacy space and outside of it. This is something that we need to look at. I mean, my way of approaching this is that I think I don't think that we can or should rely kind of entirely on like people being pure and people not having all kinds of side interests, because like side interests are just a very healthy thing for anyone doing technology to have, and then those just inevitably turn into other kinds of participation various projects. I think the solution that I favor is like being aware of the problem and at the very least like making sure that we're balanced in terms of what kinds of things we have exposure to, right? And like, and I feel like our efforts at like, for example, being balanced, like having a balanced level of communication and like relationships with different L2s has improved quite a bit compared to a few years ago. I mean, of course, there definitely is a point at where you just get to the question of, well, like what if a problem can be solved like either with infrastructure or just without infrastructure at all by through the L1 absorbing more functionality. And that one, like, and I think the best answer there is like there will always be a subset of people who either like have investments in L2s but still real believe in the L1 first and foremost because despite that because L1 because like ETH is their primary thing, or people who just don't have any connections to L2s, or maybe they don't have connections to L2s but they do have connections to dApps, or maybe if we're talking about like say something that dApps could provide versus L1, then like people who don't have connections to dApps but do have to L2s, or like there will be some people who don't have a conflicting incentive who are able to make a proposal, and then if that proposal makes sense, then like our ability to have technical debate within the EIP process, I think, should be strong enough that like that argument wins, and like they and people on the other side like would just not be able, like if there isn't a good argument to not expand like what L1 can do, then it should not happen, right? Or as in, if there is not if there is no good argument for why like a particular form of expanding L1's capabilities should not happen, then like that form of expansion should just happen, right? And I think we have seen a lot of willingness recently to increase the scale of L1. I think probably to the point where like I'm definitely not worried about the L1 scaling too little. I am like I'm also scared about the problem on the other side, which is basically that people try wanting to meet the demands of an eager community, but then like taking corners on decentralization or taking corners on deadlines. Like I think that if it has to, like if security demands that Fusaka comes in 2026, Fusaka should come in 2026, right? Like when enterprises talk about why they value Ethereum, like they the thing that they always talk about again and again is the reliability of the chain, right? And that Ethereum doesn't go down, right? And so they like the flip side is like actually being able to value that, right? So like I guess to summarize the answer, to me the solution can't come from like people being like everyone being pure and not having interest. I think a solution has to come from having diversity within the ecosystem, so that if the right solution exists, then there always will be people who are able to come up with it and to champion it. And we need to have an environment where the approach that is better can win.
Thoughts on competition of the standards proposed in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think the answer to this depends a lot on like what specific standard we have in mind, right? Because like in the case of account abstraction, for example, one of the issues is that like something like 4337 inherently has inefficiencies from the fact that it's a standard instead of a protocol feature, and like the fact that it has this kind of like it gets a lot of extra gas overhead as a result of that, right? And so the solution is to just make something inspired by ERC 4337 but more optimized a protocol feature. Sometimes like it is something that does not make sense to put into a protocol. It just is a standards issue. In In that case, I think, I mean, the Ethereum Foundation, for example, has a few levers that we theoretically can use, right? So one of them is funding and, like, for example, paying for implementations, potentially even paying for integration. And so far, like, our funding has been almost entirely focused on like L1 client development, but being more active in the ecosystem is something that like theoretically could happen, right? And I think in like we've started recently, or early in the year, we opened the DeFi treasury and are still in the process of expanding that. And so that's also a way for the EF to like support projects that actively follow the EF's goals, which include things like open source and privacy and security, and also include standards compliance. Then also just so there's like supporting application layer, and then there's just like writing code directly and reducing the cost for people to adopt things, right? And so this is part of where like we there's always this question of like, how do you get people to adopt the private thing, right? And making it much cheaper. There's like transaction fee cheaper, there's like cheaper for users, there's also just cheaper for developers, like making it into a library is something the foundation can do. I mean, there is things like signaling and social pressure and like supporting L2 beat as one of the things that we've done in that regard. And I think all of these different tools, like they have to be used together. I mean, I think it's like it definitely is not an easy process, but it's also not an impossible process. And also another thing is, of course, the EF itself having some aspects of infrastructure that it's maintaining, right? So the Geth client is one example of that. I mean, also for like the wallet side, for example, right? So I think the recent announcement started talking about Kohaku, and then also but then the goal there is like not to like win as a wallet, but like more to demonstrate, right? And then alongside there's the goal is to develop an SDK and then work with like any wallet that's willing to integrate any of those features, right? So that's also a kind of cost, like reduce other people's costs to do the right thing sort of approach. So I think it's just a combination of all of those.
By the way, as you touched upon the EF and also the treasury question, at Zuitzerland earlier this year, one of the researchers of EF proposed that EF would have about 4 years of runway left currently. Well, will Ethereum be finished in 4 years? That's one question.
That was probably made when like what was the ETH price when that question was made? Yes, I think actually as of recently, actually, I think the financial situation is very healthy. But like because our goal, I think, as we stated again in that treasury policy, right, is that like our burn rate for I guess like kind of historically has been about 15% of our remaining funds every year, right? And that does not mean that we run out in 6.67 years, right? Because clearly Ethereum is more than 6.67 years old and we're still here. It just means like, like whatever the amount we had left, we'd spend roughly 15% of that. And so the foundation as a share of the ecosystem would decrease over time. And then in the policy, we basically said, well, actually, we want to decrease that spend as a percentage and go from the 15% a year model to like something closer to like 5%, which is standard for a lot of endowments, right? Endowments often spend like either 4 or 5% of their total assets every year. And I mean, the recent ETH price rises have definitely like really accelerated our path toward that particular sustainability milestone. So I don't know, I personally am like actually very confident there.
There was a question in the back.
What are your thoughts on Peter Thiel, a.k.a. the founder of Palantir? And can you tell us about the role of the Thiel Fellowship's founding in Ethereum?
Thoughts on Peter Thiel?
Yeah, I mean, he funds a lot of technology, some of which is the surveillance technology of the type that we're all trying to protect ourselves against. It's a lot of concern there. Peter, the fellowship is interesting. I mean, because I ended up getting it, like after Ethereum started, right? And I think the money is like at that time like helpful, though already not life changing for myself. I think the intent of it was, of course, like more for people in the kind of more average positions where they're doing something in university that was like they're in university but they're doing an interesting thing, and then like they at that time it was not even just about the money. It was like about the kind of legitimacy signal, right? Like especially toward a lot of like people, like kids whose families come from more traditional cultures, like they get a lot of social pressure to not do anything unconventional, and if you tell them you're dropping out of school, they're like, whoa, like and basically scared that you're bringing the like the family back into extreme poverty. And just like the positive signal of like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out, and like, oh, like in this case it was like the Thiel Fellowship just being a respected institution and like offering something that looks like a credential. It's like actually meaningful in that way. But then since then 10 years have passed, right? And like startups are not a rebel thing to do, and even dropping out of school is not like that rebel a thing to do anymore. I mean, who knows? Maybe the way things are going now, the real rebel thing is going to be to like actually to stay your whole life and like contribute to academia, right? But yeah, I mean, since then I think like the whole kind of like map has reshuffled by such such a huge amount, and like those earlier wins of just things like dropping out of school and doing your own thing being legitimate, and like working on radical technology being legitimate. Like I think like we've in a lot of ways like those battles have been won, and the battles that we have this decade are different, and like preserving individual autonomy and dignity and privacy in the context of technology that will accelerate realistically, whether we like it or not, is a really big and important one. So happy to be with a group of people that's focusing on that.
From our colleagues at Web3Privacy, as we're organizing the Cypherpunk Congress later this year, like Cypherpunk as an ethos has been around for 30 years. What does the Ethereum ecosystem can add to that, given its current development to the technology?
Yeah, so I think at the beginning, the core of the answer was just like raw volume of resources, right? Like if you compare things like Bitcoin, and if you compare like, for example, even like diaspora, like remember like the alt Facebook that launched way back in 2009, right? Like all of these things, and then like I2P, Tor, they all came from like roughly the same kind of like crypto anarchic social bubble, right? And the reason why crypto pulled ahead is basically that crypto makes you money, right? And this is both a blessing and a curse, and I think we've seen plenty of instances of the curse play out over the last few years in all kinds of contexts, right? And I think like we've a lot. I remember, like Bitcoiners writing think pieces about being excited about like political adoption of cryptocurrency, and like we've seen political adoption of cryptocurrency, and it's like not great. And and so, but then at the same time, right, like the cryptocurrency space basically is the thing that was single-handedly responsible for funding, I think, programmable cryptography to the point where it's like actually viable, right? And like that's a big win, and that's a big win that a lot of people outside of the crypto space will be able to benefit from. I think the crypto space has also really brought together and maintained a community of people who care about those goals and who work together toward those goals. It has created like motivating use cases for people to work around and to like put all of these things together into into something that's more practical. I think I would say going forward into the future, I mean, I do think that the cypherpunk ethos is important. I mean, I also think it needs to evolve and adapt and like make sure that it continues to be useful and like pushing in the right directions in the context of the kind of world that we're in right now, right? And then there's a lot of these like very subtle differences between the world now and the world 30 years ago, right? Like, I mean, if I had to just like list a few, right? Like 30 years ago, the slogan, on the internet, "Nobody knows you're a dog," is like, this. Beloved as this kind of like slogan of how anonymity is this force that brings freedom, right? But then now, basically, the problem is if nobody knows you're a dog, then nobody knows you're a bot, and then like you just have a whole bunch of like slop, which we've been seeing social media collapse into. And so even the privacy space, like what is ZK? It's about hiding some information while proving claims about other information, right? And that's like a really powerful thing that people back in those days were not really thinking about in the same way. Another thing I would say is like the role of powerful institutions, right? Because 30 years ago, governments were the weary giants of flesh and steel, and they were perceived as an opposition, and like I think they often should be perceived as an opposition. They do like really friggin' scary things, and especially the last few years. And in the 90s, it was like an opposition where the main like wrong thing that they do is like basically being too decelerationist. And now like governments do scary things, but the scary things that they do have nothing to do with like being an anti-technology bureaucracy. I mean, like, okay, there are a lot of specific contexts where anti-technology bureaucracy is like a really huge problem, and like apparently the US is going after solar panels now, and like that's crazy. But those guys are using technology, and they are very sophisticated, and they are the ones that are creating it, right? And so also another one is like the need to think more explicitly about coordination, right? And to think about like not just escaping other people's structures, but about creating your own structures, because that's just needed to do useful things involving large groups of people at scale. So there's a lot of these I think shifts in philosophy that need to be taken into account. And then I also think here's one thing that I think is going to be important, like a full stack focus on things like privacy and verifiability and openness, right? Like your application is not safe if the NPM dependencies are not safe. Therefore, we have to fix the NPM dependencies. Your application is not safe if the browser is not safe. Therefore, we have to fix the browser. Your browser is not safe if your operating system is not safe. Therefore, we have to fix the operating system. And like Graphene OS is like used by major world figures trying to protect themselves, and somehow it receives like much less like funding or even or attention or even competition than like a single Ethereum client. And then if you go further down, like one of the ultimate prizes is the hardware layer, right? Because none of these things are secure if there's a backdoor in the hardware, right? And
There's a stack.
Exactly, full stack. And like also on the hardware layer, thinking also biology, right, and biotech. Basically, like at some point, I think this whole like if you can't completely surrender the physical world, because there's all of these studies about how like if you you can intercept what keys someone is pressing from their keyboard from like a microphone 3 rooms away, or like from light refractions, right? And like brain-computer interfaces could fix that. A lot of things could fix that, but then, I mean, brain-computer interfaces themselves are going to be the ultimate privacy battleground, right? And yeah, is if you like brain-computer interfaces done wrong are, Mark Zuckerberg and Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin all reading your brain at the same time, right? So that, like, we don't want that. Another thing I think also is that like very early stage cypherpunk culture, like I think it was in a lot of ways like very full on oppositional, right? In the sense of like viewing the government entirely as an enemy, in terms of like framing about the things as being like a battle against mainstream actors, and like I think all of those people are like you definitely need strong counter pressures against those things, but at the same time, like there's lots of people within all of those entities that like actually share a surprising number of all of those goals. I mean, even like being anti-government is famously like popular among governments, because every government really believes in this thing called sovereignty, which means not having to bow down to any of the other 200 governments that are walking the face of this earth. So like data protection is something that is like valuable at every level, right? And then there's, I think, a growing realization that if there is a centralized database of everyone's information, that centralized database will get hacked, and then lots of other people are going to get access to that information. The whole also. Governments care a lot about protecting against privacy abuse from corporations, and then similarly, corporations often are a thing that you have to rely on to have a strong actor that's capable of counterbalancing the governments, right? And I think like Apple has done a lot of quiet good in that regard, as much as at the same time they do a lot of other things that I really disagree with, like the general kind of locked down operating system that they collect the 30% tax from thing. So it's, I think having a more kind of nuanced, like a view of like how the cypherpunk world kind of acts on and interfaces with the rest of the world, and the idea of like being a strong counterbalance without being fully oppositional is also one of those things that I think is interesting to think about. So, I don't know, long answer, but...
We have a question in the middle.
Yeah.
Thanks. I believe this from Indonesia. What do you think about one-to analysis tools and also triple calls? What's the effect to the Web3 space?
So AML as anti-money laundering requirements. Sure.
So, and then the first part was chain analysis tools, right? Which is like a bit of a different question. Yeah, I mean, I think, all of these legal requirements are going to continue to exist, right? And probably new ones will keep coming up, and I feel like the best, like the things that we need to do as a space are like, one is just continuing to kind of fight the legal fight in terms of like at the very least keeping base layers and open source technology away from those kinds of requirements. And there's been like some positive updates in the U.S. in that regard, or like at least either things that have happened, or some of the bills that are currently in progress, which is good. And then like similarly, continuing to do what we can to support people going against like chat control proposals in Europe, for example. And then the other part of the issue, I think, is like the type of compliance that is like not like complying with laws as they are written, but it's about like not creating like big scary situations that make politicians feel like they need to act, right? And I think the worst thing that we've done as a community in that space is just all of the large scale DeFi hacks. And I think it's been good that for both improvements in DeFi security and improvements in even things like privacy pools and railway and making protocols that are private for people, but that at the same time are filter out transactions that come from known attacks and similar types of sources, right? And because if you can just make it harder for North Korea to use to anonymize their stolen coins by enough that you don't have to make it impossible. You don't even have to make it crazy difficult. You just have to make it harder by enough that crypto is not easier for them to do that than the fiat banking system. Then we've basically succeeded in not contributing to the problem and in getting the target off our backs, right? And the fiat system is crazy vulnerable, right? There's a huge number of scams and especially in this part of the world, right? And most people who get scammed, despite the fact that it happens through fiat and theoretically fiat is regulated in KYC, they never get their money back, right? And so being better than fiat is actually not a super high bar, right? And I think with things like zero knowledge proofs, we have a lot of tools to be both much more privacy preserving than fiat and more inconvenient for large scale criminals than fiat. And we should try to do that.
So, here you go.
Sorry, I'm a bit excited. My name is Ferhat. I'm here at Some Capital, and we are trying to bring in a large volume of assets from institutions, family offices into the blockchain, building asset treasuries for them. So the biggest challenge we have is basically bringing them compliance at scale globally, while at the same time enabling them privacy and security policies. I think there's too many questions within just the last part of the aspect, which is not too easy to solve, I think. Looking at all the layers of structure offered, it's just really complicated to offer this at scale for firms. This is some challenge, basically. Maybe you have some insights into that.
Are you interested in DeFi protocols or
honestly, it's hard for me to answer because I think the answer in this case just depends so much both on the individual application type and on the individual jurisdiction. So,
If it's just exposure to ETH in general and the ecosystem, then ETFs and other existing tools would be an option, which are already compliant. But if you want access to DeFi, then it's different.
With L1s and L2s. So it goes basically into strategic reserves. Some companies want to build digital asset treasury for ETH or so. Just heard the royal family wants to build. So.
This is a good question for Fractum Ventures later as well, as they invest in solutions for this.
I think I just did. Just wanted to kind of re-highlight this, the importance of taking this kind of full stack approach, right? And I think this is something that where the ecosystem, I think we're really in a position to start kind of pivoting much more to this, right? And basically, if you just look at any of average dApp, right? And also I think we should, in this case, we can merge privacy and security into one category because there's a lot of shared issues and concerns, and really privacy is a type of security. But basically, so when you access a dApp, right, and theoretically the smart contracts are fully audited, it's amazing, it's even formally verified at this point, it's secured, but one, you're accessing the dApp through a web UI, and that web UI is just fetched in real time from a server. And so if the server gets hacked, then at any time, if basically, you could end up using the wrong UI, and then if you it suggests a transaction if you don't look carefully, and then you lose your money, right? Two is that UI is not just looking at the chain, it's also making all kinds of like HTTP calls, and so you don't really know where your data is going. And then 3, it's using all kinds of software dependencies. Those dependencies are getting pulled from all kinds of places. Any one of those can get hacked, right? And so both from a not losing your coins perspective and from a keeping your privacy perspective, like there is this like ecosystem level problem, right? And so I would actually love to see the ecosystem doing more to like figure out a full stack approach to building dApps and to presenting dApps to users that can solve these kinds of problems, right? Like I think we need version control for UIs. Like UIs should be hashed, they should be on IPFS, and then like it should be the team's multisig that is directly updates the IPFS, and then you have an on-chain history that shows like when it last got updated.
Swarm actually did this.
Yeah, that's good. Then we need similar things for NPM. We need similar things for all like any kind of languages that are being used. Then for privacy, I mean, I've seen there's a bunch of projects that have already done the equivalent of Etherscan contract verification, but for like ZK verification keys. That stuff is good, but that's like those pre-existing contracts needs to be organized much better. Then for like a user does not have a good way. Like if a user cares about privacy, they don't have a good way of approving and rejecting and like getting any fine-grained view into their privacy situation the way that wallets do for their assets, right? And so like making a more locked down browser that enforces some of those policies, and even where HTTP calls might have to be click-through permissioned in the same way as Web3 requests do, I think could be interesting. Another thing to also look at is I think exploring AI in the context of all of this, right? Because like to me, I view security as like even my definition of security as basically a system's ability to approximate a user's intent as weighted by like how badly things go wrong if the approximation is incorrect. And so that is, and a user's intent is fundamentally a very complicated thing. And like a user's intent is not something that you can like mathematically specify in a simple formula, right? And I think too much of what we see in security is we see people either saying, like, yeah, whatever, security doesn't matter. As Kyle Samani famously said on Twitter, I value speed more, TBH. And then, on the flip side, we have people like, I think the thing that the Rabby wallet did recently, I'm not sure if it still does, which is just like ask for permission too much. It's like if you require every ETH sense to require 5 security click-throughs, eventually people's eyes are going to glaze over and it's not going to make sense, right? And so, like, good UX is not about making it easy to do things. Good UX is also not about making it hard to do things for the sake of security. Good UX is about making it easy to do good things and making it hard to do things that are destructive for your money and your privacy. And so it's and like splitting those categories is like inherently a difficult task, right? But then like actually LLMs are a technology that has been surprisingly good at approximating those divides in a lot of those situations. And so figuring out like the right way to use that to like split apart like lower risk, higher risk categories based on what are you like amount of economic value at stake and what a user cares about, and like doing it properly and like not going in the other extreme where you're saying like, oh, you're going to trust an agent, right? And is I think an important problem. Like basically, I think like for very small value, it's like what you want is a 1 of 2 between you and the agent. For very high value, you want is a 2 of 2 between you and the agent, right? Like, it's like there are challenging UX problems there, and I think they have to be solved at this kind of bottom of the stack level, and like it can't be just an every app for itself sort of thing.
There's inherently one more question behind it is when you bring large volumes of assets into Ethereum or any other chain, is that not posing any kind of challenge or problem for the blockchain itself?
So you're asking if bringing more money on chain is a problem?
Like a large volume.
I think I think it can be. I think I think there's one of the big risks, for example, is that if there's only like one dominant stablecoin and it's a centralized stablecoin, then the issuer has a lot of bargaining power in terms of determining the winner of a contentious hard fork. And so like if you care about getting stronger privacy and censorship resistance on Ethereum, then that would be a risk. If you care about not reverting transactions, then that would be a risk. I mean, it's a risk in a lot of situations, right? And so I do think that we as Ethereum have an interest in there being a more diversified set of stable coins and more decentralized ones and more types of real world assets. I mean, another type of risk that the ecosystem has is obviously if there's a type of activity happening on it that either regulatory agency or large groups of people don't like, right? And the balance there is like, on the one hand, there's and this ecosystem is about censorship resistance, and it is about enabling like regular people to do things without having to ask big guys for permission. But then on the other hand, it's like one example of a thing that regulatory agencies are scared of is US dollar dominance, right? And at the same, like we as Ethereum, like I don't think we have a positive ideological interest in increasing US dollar dominance, right? And so, to the extent that we can have get a stablecoin ecosystem on Ethereum that is more diversified, like I actually think that is both good for Cypherpunk goals and good for regulatory goals, and so I think we should work together on making that happen.
Okay. One more?
Hi, I'm AJ. My company is Inspiration Voice, and I have a question about if we've built economies around proof of work and proof of stake, but what about proof of feeling or proof of ache or proof of aliveness? Like, is there a path where economic systems can verify not just transactions but transcendence? I'm exploring resonance-based ledgers, one that listens to the nervous system. And I'm just wondering if you think there's a future where the body itself becomes the most trusted oracle.
I guess I'm curious, like what are some things that you want to do with like those kinds of signals?
To show the viability of overflow as value and capable of being exchanged and reciprocated in an economic system where it's not coming from scarcity or lack, it's actually coming from abundant overflow. And then reciprocity becomes something that is like powered by an infinite source.
Like I think there's definitely applications where it makes a lot of sense to like explore making different aspects of a person's inner life and also like a community, people's interactions and a community's life more legible. And if you do that, then like that can even like feed into things like reputation and like all of those different identity applications. They're a way to like if you if you can show things about yourself, then like that can make other people more willing to trust and interact with you. And that's I mean, a lot of the time that doesn't require a blockchain, obviously, but there are I think what you want to look for is you want to look for these kinds of social processes that are like very organic and that happen naturally at like a physical and a small scale, but then where they can't happen across a larger scale because like trust issues exist and like on the internet we're far away, and then try to see if like making those processes that already exist more legible like somehow enables them to scale in ways that that they were not able to before. I mean, it's pretty abstract, but like that's where I think there's some interesting things.
Question I received: you're familiar with different encryption methods used in the space. Any thoughts on garbled circuits?
Yeah, garbled circuits are great. I mean, I think like I've been saying for a while that like I think like two-party computation and multi-party computation are different enough that like we should view 2PC not as being MPC but as being a different category. And like because just like in practice, the type of trust model is very different, right? MPC is just fundamentally about like, hey, let's have a committee of 16 people and like we assume 9 of them are honest. But garbled circuits are like, let's do things with my data and your data and then learn the answer of some combined computation without either of us learning things about the other, right? And so there isn't this kind of external trust assumption involved. And also garbled circuits are just much faster than more complicated forms of MPC, right? So it's, I mean, I think there's really cool application categories that could be done there. Like the most natural one is the sort of like the are we compatible use case, right? Which is like I've seen people like explore this for dating sites. I've seen people explore it for employment. I think compatibility between a person and a community in general, based off of some private information that like a person's private history and potentially private history of people on the other side, or potentially a private algorithm on the other side. I think like a lot of interesting stuff there. I mean, like generally, being able to, I mean, even you know, like things like sort of private training, right, or even things like being able to extract like a very limited number of bits of from a person's information, but in a way, where like if you have to combine information from multiple people, then and like potentially the computation itself might involve data from other people, and so you don't really wants to do it fully in the clear. Like there's a lot of these use cases where it's good, it's a valuable thing, and so I think it's great that that technology is continuing to improve.
Let's see, I have another. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Going back to the initial question of why is privacy on privacy effective? I think one of the at this why one of reasons is that a punishment. So we define this central exchange here in Japan without defining each platform with a central method. They might just blacklist me and then I would lose access to all my. And what's happening to like witnessing what's happening to tomato cash centers. How do you encourage people to speak privacy? Want to push boundaries?
Negative incentives to privacy.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious, like, are the exchanges hostile to Railgun too, or have they just not heard of it yet? Yeah, I guess, because I think, like, one of the more kind of, one of the important variables here, right, is, like, what is the mechanism by which exchanges decide, like, what they blacklist, right? And because a lot of the time outsource it to some third-party provider, and like often it's chain analysis, but like basically, yeah, because if the underlying algorithm is like less about detailed analysis of individual protocols, and it's more about, oh, this guy has money from a thing, and that thing interacted with lots of North Koreans, and therefore I'm going to blacklist a thing, right? Then like that actually creates almost like a very optimal kind of incentive structure for people like Railgun, because they have an incentive to like figure out a way to make a thing that is as private as possible, but at the same time excludes North Koreans well enough to pass the test, right? And so, if that is the like the kind of underlying incentive structure at play, then like I think it's like a good thing, and probably the thing to do now is to like use the smaller protocols, and then it's up to them to basically make sure that they can like limit things like large scale DeFi thefts by enough that they don't get into the blacklisted position. If it's like a very generic kind of hostile legal stance to that kind of privacy, then obviously it's going to be much harder to get to get past that, and in that case, I think the best answer there is like both hope and I think that it doesn't happen, and actively make the case to government for and also to the public for why a friendly stance to privacy protocols is both viable and a good and the right thing to do. So,
as the Cash was mentioned, what can current and next generation of privacy build at the government from this case?
Yeah, I think, to me, actually, Tornado Cash is like one of those examples of this like aspect of a cypherpunk ethos that's like a little bit too openly oppositional, right? I think, even like they did a lot of things. Even calling it Tornado, like making it like having like swag that involved things like lingerie machines, and like basically kind of flying very close to the sun in terms of those kinds of optics, right? And I think like there's a very sort of 1990s kind of like spirit to that approach, and like I really I respect the spirit, and I admire the bravery in it, right? But at the same time, I think that approach is like well adapted for that world. It's less adapted for the current world, and the reason why it's less adapted for the current world is because communication is much stronger between everyone and everyone, and basically, like I think the winning strategy in the modern game is to have a strong and credible story for why your thing is not a rebellion against the world. Your thing is like actually compatible with the goals that a majority of people care about, and as well as being like compatible with like any explicit laws that are available. And like you can push the boundary, and you still should push the boundary, and like you still should even be willing to publicly phrase your thing in the context of like being a tool for protecting people against oppression, right? But at the same time, like and so I think like on the PR side, like that's one of the things that I would say, and like a lot of the best protocol and like a lot of the most successful privacy projects that we see do a good job of this. Like Signal does a good job of this, right? And like there's a lot of things to criticize in Signal, but I think it does do a good job of that, right? It's like when the U.S. government uses your messaging application, like that's a win condition, right? The other part of this is, of course, in practice, right? Basically, the fact that like North Koreans the government started using their stuff in an obviously criminal way on a large scale, and both pretty conspicuously did not do anything and did not manage to decrease that at all was like a pretty big deal, right? Whereas if you compare to something like Railgun, like it like with the privacy pools mechanism, it has a lot of tools to make it harder for any type of bad actor to participate. Like there's a lot of lines for response, while at the same time still preserving the privacy property, which is like baked into the protocol in a deep way that can't really be taken away, right? Like you can't really just like suddenly flip a switch and say, okay, like Railgun is KYCing everyone now because the contracts don't let you do that. And so, I think striking that balance is good.
In the middle.
Yeah. It's like a little.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to establish a new health standard where patients control their own data, but governments can still use it for training AI models.
Okay.
How do you see Ethereum privacy technologies helping to achieve that balance?
Okay.
Patient data.
Yeah, so I think the question I think that is interesting is like what part of that whole piece blockchains are good for, right? Because like you can do all of that without a blockchain, right? And you can make a protocol where, like, if I had that problem, I would probably use some differential privacy thing where, like basically, every user provides their data with a lot of like noise and a lot of, like replace like things, a lot of data with kind of like much more coarse-grained indicators and like figure out what are the specific things applications need, and then focus on that, and then on top of that, maybe add FHE, and then on top of that, even maybe add TEs, right? But then that's so for preserving privacy, for solving the problem of privacy and compute at the same time, like that part blockchains don't help in unique cryptography. Where I think blockchains do help is in providing like more interesting kinds of security assurances, and basically in terms of ensuring the authenticity of the data, right? Because if you want, like, for example, if you want to do one of these things where you like have a marketplace for data and people get compensated for providing their data, then the problem is, well, people, as soon as that incentive exists, people are going to create fake people and are going to try to farm it, right? And like at the very least, the thing that you can do is you can authenticate, try to authenticate the device. And you can have like on-chain gadgets that can provide some interesting guarantees in that regard, right? So like, for example, a thing that you can do is you can have a TE, and then you pair that with an on-chain contract where that on-chain contract has a bounty, and that bounty just automatically pays out like $500,000 to whoever can either extract the attestation key, or even cause an attestation key to sign any kind of message that it's not supposed to sign, right? And then you just have that bounty exist, and then the existence of the bounty is proof that that type of hardware still can be trusted, at least up to $500,000, right? So
that's neat.
That is another type of thing that you can do is also that a user can like regularly commit, like they can regularly publish hashes of personal data that they're storing. And then the idea is that if they later decide to sell the data, then they at least have a proof that that data was created before a particular point in time. Yeah.
Data, but not personally me, a government.
Wait, so you mean the government already has data about people? Okay. I mean, if the government already has data about people, then like it can already train what it wants, and it's hard to have any guarantees, right? Because if you make one process that has guarantees, it could just do another process in parallel that bypasses all of them.
They're not satisfied to the speed of transactions.
Right, but okay, with the speed of transactions on the blockchain or in general?
In general.
Okay, what kinds of transactions do they want to do?
Train AI models.
Right, okay, so they want to have more compute to train AI models. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think of that as being a blockchain problem. Like, isn't that just like a buying AWS credits problem?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's not mention them here.
Yeah.
There was a question in the back.
Should I just shout out?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so depending on who you ask, Cypherpunk can mean a different thing, and I think there's a whole history to it, phone freaking, Frack magazine, and so on. So let's say some people would gently raise their eyebrows hearing Cypherpunk in this cryptocurrency space. And I mean, you look around, how many people use Telegram? Can you use any sort of Ethereum client on Tails OS? I don't know. What do you think the cryptocurrency space or the Web3 space is bringing to the table?
Yeah, okay, so I think...
Perhaps you can also shed some light on DeFi punk in that, because I think you came up with that one.
Yeah, but maybe, so I think the biggest concrete thing that the cryptocurrency space has realistically contributed to like broader cypherpunkdom is, I mean, one is obviously just like making it possible for people to have payments privately, which has been a cypherpunk goal since David Chaum in 1982. The other one is the sheer volume of resources that it has brought into the development of cryptography, and especially programmable cryptography. Like things like ZK snarks and probably even modern fully homomorphic encryption would not exist to anything like the level at which they existed without the resources that probably the cryptocurrency space itself was provided, right? So I think if I had to like ask what are the biggest positive things that like the cryptocurrency space has contributed, I would say those two. I mean, I definitely think that like we should be getting off of Telegram. I actually, I mean, I feel like actually Signal has been gained a huge amount of like market share in terms of conversations within the crypto space over the past year or so, right? I mean, like Fileverse, I use it regularly, and like we actually have an end-to-end encrypted alternative to Google Docs, which is good. Also, and this is, and then the other area where like I think is incentive compatible for crypto to contribute, for the cryptocurrency space to contribute, is as I've said, going like full stack, right? Because like cryptocurrency is not secure if the browser and the operating system and NPM are not secure. And at the same time, any other application that claims to be cypherpunk made by anyone is not secure if those things are not secure, right? And so I think collaborating on improving the security guarantees of those things is something that we like all of us like I think really needs to be more actively involved in going forward.
Last question.
Great. My name is Marco. I'm based here in Tokyo. The idea of privacy and crypto and I think branding is so important. We live in a world of branding. Adidas, Nike. The Ethereum logo is one of the most famous logo. I think, besides Bitcoin. I think even more than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What is your view about having black logo, the black Ethereum logo, meaning privacy, equaling, meaning privacy and pushing it between all the conference, worldwide?
Yeah,
etc.
It's interesting. I mean, I do wonder if like privacy should necessarily be associated with like black, right? Like I think, I mean, I like
no
I get no, I mean, I get the like. I mean, obviously, kind of, it makes sense in terms of the raw physics that, like, when it's dark, you can't see things, right? And, it's been this appealing meme, right? But it's, at the same time, like, things like DarkFi, they definitely, contribute to a type of perception of privacy that, like, I think, could even be harmful toward its broader adoption. And like I think we should all be thinking about like, well, maybe privacy needs to be cute, and then thinking about like what is a cute private Ethereum logo. And like I don't know, like I think there is value in also thinking about that that kind of that other direction as well.
Well, unlike our posters, we do promote joy, as in optimism in privacy, because there's enough options, enough reasons to be doing globally, and I think you need the optimism in the space to collaborate and to incentivize and clean. So, yes, they don't think black should need to be synonymous with privacy, from our perspective at least. Yes. Yeah. I think that was the last one. Oh, okay. Dear colleague of Web3Privacy, go ahead.
Just curious, so since there's a hackathon starting now, and I always like to ask you this question, what would you like to see being built from the hackathons in the next day?
Expectations of the Hackathon EthTokyo as the final question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I feel like a lot of the things that I had suggested before, like one of them is this, like there should be an Etherscan contract code verification equivalent for ZK. Like actually 10 of those exist, and there the problem is just getting them more integrated into mainstream things. I think going in the direction of like privacy-friendly DApp UIs is a valuable thing. And like obviously you can like take individual like projects and like make a fork that doesn't call home, but then there's the question of like a more systematic way of doing it, right? Like you know, could you have a browser extension that has like a mode where you just say like, okay, this application is not allowed to call home anymore? Could you have a UI programming language that is like more restricted than HTML and JavaScript, but that like enforces security properties better? Then on the other side, I think privacy for identity and like making privacy for identity actually convenient. Okay, so here's like one specific puzzle, right? So like there's a lot of these projects that are like ZK Passport and like ZK. I mean, WorldCoin has ZK baked in by default. ZK Mine has ZK Government ID, right? And one of the problems that I have with these things is what I talked about in my blog post on disliking overly strong proof of personhood about 2 months ago, right? And the comment that I made there is like, actually, proof of personhood can be exclusionary and be anti-freedom even if it's ZK wrapped. And then the question is, well, how do you avoid that, right? And then to me, the only solution is pluralistic identity, right? Which basically means that like you have a bunch of different actors that are making a bunch of different claims about different people, and then when you prove your identity, you're proving some claim about multiple different statements that are in your history, right? And so like one very basic example of this is like if you want a kind of decentralized version of a college diploma, you just ZK prove a history of interactions with a bunch of other people who have a college diploma, right? And for a lot of people, like that's going to be a good enough substitute, right? And that reduces the like the university as a point of control, right? But then the challenge is like you need to have a framework that can actually make that intelligible for application developers, right? Because the reason why people love these like very binary, either you're a human or you're nothing kind of identity models is that they're just like really conceptually simple to understand. They're really conceptually simple to develop around as a programmer, right? And so if figuring out some kind of abstraction that satisfies the goals that some applications have, but that is more pluralistic, I think is something that is going to be very very valuable. Let's see, just throwing around other kinds of ideas. Like one example of a problem to tackle is like, okay, who here has used a VPN in the past month? Okay, just checking. This is an actual Cypherpunk conference. Then, okay, basically, yeah. Who here expects that they filled more than 10 CAPTCHAs while using a VPN in the last month? More than 100? See, probably, right? It's basically, it's like, you know, the unavoidable experience of a VPN is that you just get asked for a CAPTCHA everywhere, right? And so if you could prove that, like, basically that you're not a Sybil attacker using some ZK approach, that, like, I think pluralistic identity is actually perfect for this because it's like a low risk use case. There's no legal requirements to do anything. There, like, if you fail, like, your application just gets spammed more. But then at the same time, it's like solving a real pain point for people. Then, like, basically, yeah, like essentially figuring out some kind of Cloudflare like alternative that does denial of service protection, but that accepts zero knowledge proofs of not being a Sybil of like maybe 10 different kinds. Like that is a product that could be very useful to the world. Like I think that's also potentially a project worth making.
Good. Okay. That was the last one. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today. And we're all coming to your talk tomorrow.
Yeah.